attack. Almost a third of members are urging President Obama to get their approval before any strike. One of those lawmakers is joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She represents California's 9th District. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us so early on the West Coast especially.
Pleased to be with you.
So, Congresswoman, explain to us your position on a military strike on Syria.
First, let me say that the world cannot stand by and watch the gassing of innocent civilians and children. Chemical attacks and assaults on people anywhere in the world must be dealt with, and must be dealt with in a very forceful way. And I'm saying, with regard to the issue around military strikes, that it's very important to recognize that, as the Secretary of State said, that there's no military solution to this, that this requires a negotiated settlement. And what I'm concerned about is that Congress has not had that full debate nor a vote if, in fact, the administration is going to use force. We have to look at what the implications and the unintended consequences could be. What are the ramifications of, unfortunately, the possibility of a regional conflict, a regional war? Will more innocent people get killed? Will chemical attacks continue? And so we have to look at and weigh all of the options before any type of a military attack is taken. And I believe Congress and the American people really should have that information, should debate it, and should cast a vote as to whether or not this is the correct strategy. Some would vote for it, some would vote for against it. But I tell you, the ramifications are grave, and we have to do something, but we have to do it in a way that does not create more chaos and more carnage.
And Congresswoman, I think one of the reasons you were a leading voice on this is because in 2001, just a few days after 9/11, you were the only member of Congress to vote against giving President Bush sweeping powers to respond to the 9/11 attacks. This was obviously a very much a moment where I think people look back a few years later and said, you know, when public opinion had changed, they looked at sort of what you said, many more people would say, as a more informed decision than they thought it to be at the time. Now, here we are this much later, and I wonder, though, I want to play devil's advocate with you here. If the U.S. does not act, if President Obama does not make good on his word, what kind of message does that send to other foes of the U.S., like Iran?
You know, we have to really recognize that, especially in the Middle East, the region is in chaos. There's civil wars taking place, especially in Syria. And the United States has to exercise its leadership and try to bring together an international coalition to move towards some form of a negotiated settlement. What the signal and I think the communication to the rest of the world should be is that we are going to condemn and hold those accountable who have engaged in this terrible, terrible slaughter. But we're also going to move to try to achieve some semblance of regional stability and lead toward a negotiated settlement, as the Secretary of State said. This is not Afghanistan, Iraq, nor Libya. In 2001, the resolution that I voted against was a blank check. It's been used, I know, over 30 times to engage in some form of conflict and hostility. And in fact, that resolution needs to be repealed, because that is a resolution that allowed for an open-ended war. In this instance, the president said that should force be used, it's going to be targeted, it's going to be limited, it's not going to be open-ended. We have to believe that. What I'm concerned about, and what many of us said in our letter, and there are about 64 now who have signed that letter, is that we should consider the implications and the impact and the ramifications of such a strike, and is this the most prudent way to hold the Assad regime accountable, and in fact, will this stop the use of chemical weapons and create less hostility, which will allow us to move to a negotiated settlement.
And Congresswoman,
that's the debate we need to have.
Very quickly, because I'm running out of time here, if you have some strange bedfellows between liberal Democrats and some Republicans who want consultation here, if this were to go for a vote before the House, authorization of force, would it pass?
That's hard to say, because we have not had a debate. There's bipartisan, at least consideration of wanting to do an analysis, a debate, and understand the full implications. And the American people, I think, really deserve that debate. And so I think there's some bipartisan consensus that there should be a debate and a vote. I'm not sure what that vote would be, but minimally we should really afford the American people the opportunity to know the pros and cons and to really understand that if we take military action, what the ramifications and what the unintended consequences could be, so that the country is prepared. And if the president is moving forward on this, he'll have the backing, of the majority of the American people and the Congress. I think that needs to happen.
Congresswoman Barbara Lee, California Democrat, thanks for getting up so early with us. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be with you.
Now let's take a turn now. You go on the road for Labor Day. Is that you this weekend?